He's Dave and I'm Dallas, and we have opinions on just about everything. Sometimes they're on point, and sometimes they go down better with a glass of wine. Join us. This is the Wine and Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to Wine and, the show where we pair wine with movies, music, books, comics, and finally, TV. We have arrived, people. TV seasons are long. There is a lot to cover, a lot to watch in preparation. So we're going to do any given season of any given TV show across multiple weekly episodes. So for instance, sidebar, I'm recording this many weeks after the fact because the rollout plan has changed since we initially recorded this. The plan now is that our Severance episodes will be a 5-part miniseries within the larger podcast. So for instance, 2 days, part 1 is going to cover the history of the making of the TV show, our own respective histories with the show, and then we admittedly get a little sidetracked with some heady topics on consumer responsibility and pretension in both Hollywood and the wine industry. But then part 2 will then cover episodes 1 through 3 of Severance Season 1. Part 3 will cover episodes 4 through 6. Part 4 will cover episodes 7 through 9. And then part 5, we have a very special guest that we're going to have on, Chris Black, the man who ran the writer's room for Severance and is the credited writer on episode 8. And he's also the co-creator and showrunner for another Apple TV Plus show, Monarch: Legacy of Monsters, the Godzilla show, starring Kurt Russell, out right now. Season 2 has already been greenlit, just like Severance Season 2 has already been greenlit. So Chris has been working in TV since the late 1980s. He has worked on Weird Science, Sliders, Star Trek Enterprise, Desperate Housewives. Yes, that happened. He's also worked on Mad Men. I mean, you name it, he has probably worked on it. One of the reasons I'm recording this so many weeks later, this is probably 2 months after we recorded the first episode of this Severance coverage, is because I wanted to make sure that Chris could actually be on the show. He was filming in Australia for a month. And so once we locked him in and recorded his episode, it's done. It's in the can. So once we had it in the can, I knew what the plan was going to be to roll all this out. So episodes will drop twice per week. So this episode drops at the end of this week. Next week, expect parts 2 and 3, and then parts 4 and 5 the week after. So 5 episodes, 2.5 weeks, then back to once a week eps. Here we go. Part of the fun there is going to be seeing if whatever it is we pair with these first few episodes today continues into the future episodes. Maybe we feel there's enough distinction between different episodes to demand a different pairing, or maybe we simply update the additional great matches that we decided upon. Truly, there's never one single wine and one wine only that matches with any given thing. There's a reason Dallas and myself and our guests often all pick completely different wines or not wines. So that's going to be a big part of the fun, is just seeing, like, how do we update? What do we add to the pile, to the list of things that we think make a really great pairing? Maybe one batch of episodes were like, here's a match. And then the other one were like, here's a contrast match. Here's what would a character within the episode be drinking if I was a character within the episode, or maybe one of the characters that we're actually watching. We'll see what we do. We're going to get creative with it. But let's get to the housekeeping. Let's get that out of the way and get this party started. So, as always, if you like what you hear, please make sure to hit that follow or subscribe button. It does help the podcast grow and reach new listeners. And if you love us, then please leave a 5-star review on Apple iTunes or any other platform that allows reviews or scores. And if you don't love us, just bury it deep. Deep. Don't let it out. Just feel angry. Very, very angry. Be Banner, not the Hulk, right? Just keep it buried and don't let that beast out. Or just send us an email. All right. If you really want to do that, just send us an email, which is wine, the letter N as in Nancy, podpod@gmail.com. We could not get wine and at Gmail. We could not get wine and pod. They were all taken, you assholes. Who has those emails? You're not even using them for anything worthwhile. But we had to get wine, the letter N, POD, wine and pod@gmail.com. Send us an email. We will read it. We will even, honestly, this is early enough in the show that we will actually give a shit. We will care and actually listen to what you have to say. So send us an email now if you have feedback. And if you just loathe us and you're like, what the fuck is this show? We want it to die. Okay, fine. Leave us a poor review or score, I guess. But for the most part, don't. Just send us an email. We'll take the feedback, but then don't kill the show, right? All right. So also, I wanted to mention you can find uncut lengthier versions of these episodes, so you really love us, right? Along with articles on the intersection between entertainment and wine, interactive polls, bonus pairings, and more on our Substack, wineand.substack.com. Go there, interact with us. There's ways to chat with us. There's ways to leave comments. Some of that content is free. Some of it is for paid subscribers, supporters of the show only. But go check that out on our Substack, wineand.substack.com. And if you are on your phone, you can also send us a quote-unquote text. You'll find a clickable link at the beginning of the description of this episode. It doesn't work on every platform, but it does on most. Click that, which opens up your text app. Send us a direct message via that, which shows up in our Buzzsprout inbox as a message and does not show us your full phone number. Never fear, it only shows us your final 4 digits, like how a credit card shows up on a receipt. It's just a right here, right now, quick and easy way to send us a message, especially if you just want to be like, you rock. Thanks. We love that. Please send us more of that. No crybaby complaints. We don't want the crybaby complaints. Save that for email, because we want the crybaby complaints to actually be constructive. So don't send us a text, because you're not going to write enough. You're just going to send something like really that we're not going to be. It's going to be like 1 or 2 lines, and then you're going to be like, my thumbs are tired, and then you're just going to send it. So save that for the email, where you're actually going to type something coherent and that we can actually take in all the way. All right. Today, we are here to talk about the best TV show of 2022, hands down, Severance on Apple TV Plus. Yes. First, a little bit of background, and then we will talk about our backgrounds with this TV show. So, Severance was created by writer Dan Erikson. Erikson had worked in development for the revamped Super Deluxe production company, which pumped out a seemingly endless supply of reality TV shows between 2015 and 2018 before going out of business. Now, they actually were a company that was in business in the 00s, went out of business, then came roaring back to life in 2015. And it was the 2015 incarnation that Dan Erikson was a part of. He worked in development there. Erikson himself had written pre-shows for Lip Sync Battle between 2016 and 2018. But this and a 2011 short film, League of Wonder, which I will have, it's on YouTube for everyone to watch. I will leave a link of that YouTube short video down below in the description of this episode. These were the only credits to his name as writer prior to Severance. He submitted the pilot script to the Bloodlist. Got a little attention there. You may be familiar with the Blacklist, the end-of-year list for the best unproduced scripts that made the rounds. Well, the Bloodlist follows a similar format, but exclusively highlights projects in the thriller, science fiction, horror, dark comedy, dark fantasy, and psychological drama genres, or like what we like to colloquially call quote-unquote genre fiction, right? I mean, drama's a genre, comedy's a genre, yes, but in the local colloquial parlance, drama, straight drama and straight comedy are not genre fiction, quote unquote. They're too straight for whatever reason. So what we consider genre fiction, if you ever see like a festival and they're like, we're a genre fiction festival or what have you, they mean the not straightforward dramas. So you have to have like black comedy. You can't just be a comedy. You have to be black comedy or horror comedy or some sort of blend of that. And then of course, all the sci-fi, fantasy, horror, all of that is all wrapped up. Psychological thriller, all of these things are considered genre. So Bloodlist is the blacklist for explicitly genre fiction. Severance is about a team of office workers who have their memories surgically severed between their work life and personal lives, which sounds, as Patton Oswalt described it at the Severance Comic-Con panel, like the greatest Philip K. Dick novel never written. Erikson submitted this pilot to Ben Stiller's Red Hour production company as a writing sample. And Stiller liked it so much, he bought it on the spot and put it into development. And as we all know, the damn thing actually got made. Though it did take 5 years for it to get made. That's with Ben Stiller attached. And Adam Scott, who is on board as of 2017. The series was finally given a series order by Apple TV Plus in November 2019. So something I want to point out here, I have a bit more history to give, but quickish side note. The timeline here means that Erikson wrote the pilot well before he submitted it to Red Hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
And submitted it to Red Hour in 2017. Then it took 5 years for it to premiere in 2022. That means Erikson had only just begun working at Super Deluxe during the years that Severance was in development, and he wrote the pilot even prior to that. So folks, just keep in mind, Erikson had to keep working, keep hustling, keep his day jobs. Ben Stiller picking up his pilot did not mean he got to quit his day job.
That's right.
Only the series getting made allowed for that. And now, of course, he's a writer showrunner by nature. He doesn't have to work for groups like Super Deluxe anymore, at least not so far. We'll see what the future brings, because the entertainment industry is in a very interesting contracting, as they call it, place. We're going through contraction. We're going through a lot more rounds of layoffs still to this day. Production is not ramped up post strikes the way we all expected it to or hoped it would. So we'll see what the future brings. But right now, Severance, motherfucker, Severance is great. So a few more things before we get to the conversation at hand. Some changes were made to the OG pilot. Originally, it was Ben, Adam Scott's character, who wakes up on the table. And Helly R., played by Britt Lauer, who wakes him up and is that older sibling mentor to him. And according to Stiller, the OG pilot was much, much weirder, if anyone can believe that. It was much more, quote-unquote, acid trippy. Erikson mentioned at a Comic-Con panel at one point that a pair of disembodied legs ran by in one scene. But that didn't make
I didn't read that
cut. But right. So there was a lot of things like that were in the original treatment, the original pilot, that were excised from the final pilot, where it became a bit more streamlined. So it's weird, but it's not weird in a, as Ben Stiller put it, acid trippy way. Now it's weird in just a mood / like everything's off, and you're not sure what's going on or why half the time in the show, but you don't get the feeling that the show doesn't know what's going on or why. So that's a key difference right there, right? Sure. Adam Scott was the first to be cast for the show. He'd been looking for something outside of comedy ever since the ending of Parks and Rec. And he even came from drama first and then fell into comedy. But once he fell into comedy, and he fell into comedy because he had done, I'm going to forget the name of the show, but he was on a show that was very dramatic. And it was like, it's a very good show. I love this cast, but it was very serious. And he's like, I had to go to work. And like, how am I going to cry today? Because my character's going to cry. And then he did Step Brothers, the movie. And it was like a whole different experience. He's like, I want to go to work. Like, I'm feeling like lighthearted and like bouncy, and this is going to be fun, versus like, I have to be in character and I have to like find my way to do the scene. And after that, he really wanted to do comedy for a while, but post Parks and Rec, he's like, oh, okay. Now I've done that. Now I've done it for a good long chunk. So how do I get back into drama? And he actually had difficulty in securing any such part, because Hollywood is Hollywood, and now he's the Parks and Rec guy, right? Yeah. Now he's the sitcom guy. So now he's comedy. Everyone magically forgot that he had ever done drama. Like, even Dallas, you heard his own, I'm like, he came from drama, and Dallas was like, oh, and that's like, yeah, we forget. Life moves on, and you are always what your most recent big, especially if it's a big hit.
Absolutely.
Right? If whatever you recently did, if no one watched it, no one cares. And that's cool. But if everyone watches it and it's a hit, that's who you now are. Yeah. But he was able to get a small part on Big Little Lies. That was his first little transition back into drama. And then Ben Stiller, to his credit, thought of Adam Scott and sent him the pilot script for Severance.
Wow.
Yet even though Stiller sent Scott the script directly, Scott was certain he would never get the part. In his own words, quote, when you read something that's great, you think, well, I'm never going to do it. They're never going to give it to me. But they did, and the rest is history.
Beautiful.
The rest of the cast, was rounded out by Zach Cherry, Britt Lauer, Trammell Tillman, Jen Tulloch, D-Chun Lackman, Michael Chernus, John Turturro, Christopher Walken, and Patricia motherfucking Goddess Arquette.
Oh yeah.
The series premiered on Apple TV Plus on February 18, 2022. It received acclaim from critics and audiences for its cinematography, direction, production design, musical score, story, and performances. The series received 14 nominations at the 74th Primetime Emmy Awards, including Outstanding Drama Series and Acting nominations for Scott, Turturro, Walken, and motherfucking Goddess Arquette. It won for main title design and musical score. In April 2022, the series was renewed for a second season, which wrapped principal photography in April 2024, just 2 months prior to recording this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Woo, baby!
Yeah, it's got a crazy little production history. Every time I talk to someone about this show, they are so surprised that Ben Stiller is associated with not only associated with it with production, but associated with directing at least 6 of the 9 episodes. So it's kind of fantastic. It's a trip for sure. And another bit of trivia here, guys. So Erikson has gone on record, sort of, saying that some of the inspiration comes from the creepypasta back rooms,
back rooms. What are they called?
Back rooms. Internet meme, if you remember, was very popular. Sort of a quasi alternate reality games based on eldritch locations, which are just sort of, alternate worlds, essentially, filled with infinite sort of spaces and rooms. And it's curious because I remember playing around with those years ago. And
I'd never heard of them
really?
Before I looked up. It was only looking up the history of this project that I was like, what the fuck are back rooms?
Interesting.
Had no knowledge of any of that.
And what's amazing is, when we watched that first episode, I remember sitting there thinking, God, this feels like that sort of those games I played years ago. And it's part of the reason I think I enjoyed it so much, because it was just kind of meandering through this fairly empty world with no real sort of texture in the background to kind of give you a clue as to what's happening. So, just a bit more trivia about this sort of crazy world that comes from Erikson. So, yeah.
Yep. And so the 3 episodes we're going to be talking about today, we're going to talk episodes 1, 2, and 3. All 3 are directed by Ben Stiller.
That's right.
It's only, and then our second podcast episode, when we cover episodes 4 through 6, that is the only other director on the show, Aoife McArdle or Effie McArdle. I'm never sure how to pronounce that Irish name. Is it Effie or Aoife? But I'm going to go with Aoife McArdle, who directed all 3 of those middle episodes. And then Ben Stiller returned for the final 3 episodes. And that's it. 2 directors on an entire season. That's kind of unheard of, folks. You don't. Miniseries will sometimes have the same director all the way through with only a little bit of pinch hitting, which I guess you can kind of maybe look at Severance closer to a miniseries than a series in that way.
It has a limited series kind of feel. For sure.
A little bit. And, I'm going to say this right now because I'm a little confused. Now, they have not, even though season 2 wrapped production 2 months ago, there's still no release date for it. They have not announced it for season 2. And apparently there's only 6 episodes in season 2, which is baffling to me. I'm really uncertain what to make of that. Especially because in this season 1, Dan Erikson wrote episodes 1, 2, and 9, the last episode, right? And with other writers coming in for the episodes in between. In season 2, he only wrote the first one. Someone else even writes the end of season 2.
Yeah.
So at first I was thinking, if season 2 is only 6 episodes, maybe that's the finale. Maybe that's it, because they're like, this is all the story there is. So let's just wrap it up in 6 episodes versus 9 versus 12 versus whatever, because that's all the story requires. But because it's not Dan Erikson writing the finale of season 2, I'm like, okay, no.
Exactly.
This is a weird interim season. Yeah, where I'm like, this is going to be, they're advancing a few things, but maybe they're saving, why only 6 episodes? I'm like, and that's why I really think it's an interim thing where they're exploring maybe something a little more on the side to the core.
Yeah, I think
and then they're going to bring it together maybe in season 3.
I think it's either that or I imagine what Apple has done since the response has been so interesting.
Yes.
Is they're probably asking them to lean into the sort of Black Mirror kind of aspect, and kind of, like you said, sort of veer off into other sort of secondary kind of
Right.
themes and worlds. I also think they may play with the length a little bit more per episode. So we'll see. I'm quite excited about this. So
Yeah. All right.
but
Well,
really,
let's
there's
get
nothing online, no hints whatsoever online as to what the hell's
no,
going to happen.
no,
So
which is for the best. I mean,
that
I'm
is
not someone who I never get involved with online discussions of
Me
TV
either.
shows for that very reason.
Me
A lot of
either.
people are like, but spoilers. Why does everyone spoil everything? And I'm like, what are you doing to constantly be spoiled? Because I'm like, I can go through life, and I'm online all the time, and I can still go
Yeah.
through life and not know what's happening in my TV shows that I like. It's not hard.
Right.
You just stop opening every fucking article about
Right,
it. Like,
right.
let it go. When the season drops, you'll know when it drops. It'll be available to you, so you'll
Right.
know when it happens. And unless that headline is like, here's the date, you know it's not a headline you want to read unless you want hints and spoilers. And then they're going to watch all the trailers. They're every fucking trailer, every version of the trailer, get involved in discussions about every version of the trailer,
Yep.
have people tell them other things they read elsewhere. And I'm like, right, if you're going to do all of that, you need to shut the fuck
You
up.
need to shut the hell up and go home. Yes.
Right, because you're doing it to yourself at that point. It's like, either have a modicum of fucking patience
Yes.
and just wait for the goddamn thing to drop, or be spoiled.
That's right.
But that's your options. But it is an option, and you are choosing every fucking time to be spoiled. You have to stop blaming everybody else and the internet and the whatever the fuck. It's your choice
It is.
to do that.
It is.
And so many people are like, no, it's everywhere. It's ever present. I'm like, no, because it is ever present, and I'm never spoiled. Like, I know it's a choice because I'm on the other side of that choice.
Exactly.
I make that choice all the time. I see an article that's like behind the scenes of da-da-da, and I'm like, okay, no, I don't want to read that article because it might spoil some things. I'll know more of the cast. I don't even want to know who's cast in season 2, and I haven't looked that up.
Same.
I've seen the list of names like in passing, and I don't look at that list because I'm like, no, I'm just going to watch the show, just like I did for season 1. Because season 1, of course, no one knows it's coming. No one gives a shit. You don't know what it is.
Right.
So no one reads up anything about season 1, really. And then you watch it, and you're pleasantly surprised.
Mm-hmm.
Keep that. You were so into Severance season 1 because it was a surprise.
Exactly.
Because you knew nothing about it going in. Why would you not want to repeat that experience?
Right.
Repeat that experience, folks.
You know,
Don't read all the shit.
There are also people who just enjoy complaining. They just enjoy complaining. And I think that's most of that crowd, you know.
And people also, you know, people are very... this is something that I feel like a lot of younger folks, as you get older, or even older folks now, like maybe we're just in a point of our culture and society where 10 years from now we'll all understand what we've done. But right now we're refusing, which is, you know, as a consumer, consuming something is it's an opportunity to vote, essentially, what you want more of and what you don't want more of.
Right.
It's your vote to support something or not support something. And we're living in an era right now where consuming is just drop of a hat. Something is released, you want to be part of the conversation, you want the brownie points on social media, and so you're going to consume it so you can talk about it.
Right.
And it's like, okay, but then you will get 5 more Rebel Moons.
Absolutely.
Like, you will. Absolutely. And Netflix will invest $500 million in 5 more Rebel Moons,
just because of that
anything else.
Exactly, just because, or at least predicated mostly on that initial bump of everyone tuning in so they can be a part of the conversation. Right. And the reality is, if you don't want more Rebel Moon, and you likely know you don't want more Rebel Moon going in.
Right. Or you do, then you watch it to support. If you're a Snyder bro, right? If you're a Snyder bro, you're like, I like Snyder. I like everything he does. You're like, great. Then watch it. That's your vote for it. But everyone else who wants to talk about it but doesn't like what Snyder, and you can tell by the trailer that it's going to be maybe it's a better version of Snyder, but it's still Snyder, and it looks just like a Snyder movie. Like plainly, he's not doing anything wildly different there. So you know going in what it is. When you consume it, all Netflix cares about is the view. Right. And especially an early review. They need the bump. View. Sorry, not review, just view. Reviews. So that is the vote. Like if everyone watches it its first couple of weeks, boom, Netflix will make more of that. And we know the industry is contracting right now. They're going to make less of everything. Yeah. So your watching Rebel Moon means they will dump a lot of less money. They have less total budget to make things, and they're now going to make more of this big bloated Snyder blockbuster stuff. Just general nonsense. A lot less of everything else. Yeah. So your opportunity as a consumer is to vote for one thing and not the other. Right. If you and I think a great example of this, let's take Furiosa, the latest Mad Max movie that's in theaters right now, right? Or the fourth Bad Boys. Mm-hmm. If you want, like, Furiosa might be for you personally a misfire. You might watch it and be like, I liked Fury Road better. Sure, absolutely. But the question is, do you want studios to take risks like Furiosa in the future? Right. Or do you want them to stick to the safe thing, which will be another Transformers, another Bad Boys, or maybe you want more Bad Boys, which is totally fair. Honestly, 3 and I haven't seen number 4, but I saw 3. I liked it quite a bit. Bad Boys 3, they're safe, but they're good. Right. Minor inventiveness, but very minor. It's a great, but it is one of those generational, like, these icons are aging. It's all about them aging. It's all about them becoming the older version of themselves. That's fun, but it's still like, let's just keep dragging things from our past up and never do anything new. Which do you want that? Now, Mad Max ain't exactly new either. So let's get that out of the way there too. Let's make sure we've given some lip service to the fact that Mad Max is an ancient franchise, but
talk about a legacy franchise.
Right. Yeah. But at the very least, 2 things about Mad Max I want to point out. One, George Miller is on record as saying that every single Mad Max movie he makes, he considers it a complete reinvention of the franchise every single time, which is why Thunderdome does not feel like Road Warrior, which does not feel like the first Mad Max, which does not feel like Fury Road, which now Furiosa is itself a different beast than Fury Road, which a lot of people are like, oh yeah, it's not Fury Road again. And it's like, nothing Miller does in Mad Max will ever be like the one he did before. That's right. Furiosa, and God bless you for it, Miller. Right. Right. It's always a fight to make these movies in the studio system, like with the budgets that he needs. It took almost 20 years for him to make Fury Road. And he had to make Happy Feet 1 and 2 in order to get Fury Road made. So these movies are, again, do you want risks like a Mad Max franchise, or do you want risks like a Bad Boys franchise, or do you want quote unquote risks like Transformers or Ghostbusters? Oof. It's up to you. Or more Zack Snyder, Rebel Moon. These are choices that we as consumers have to make by watching or not watching shit. And you have to make that active fucking choice.
There are consequences to just buying tickets to nonsense. There are consequences. Like you said, they're going to make more or not buying tickets. That's the other point. That's the counterpoint, is like you and Dave were saying, if you want them to take more risks, then you have to support the risks with your attendance. You just have to.
Right. And go with word of mouth to the best of your ability, but also things like The Creator that came out recently. It might not be the most mind-blowing movie ever made. It might not be the thing that like wows you per se, but it was a stab at making a lower budget sci-fi effects heavy blockbuster.
Right. Who did The Creator?
The creator was Edward Godzilla, the American Godzilla director, Monsters director.
Yes, you're right. Yes,
we just talked about him in the Godzilla episode. Edward.
Oh crap! We just talked about him. Anyway, we'll circle
Rogue
back
One
around.
Director. Right. Star Wars Rogue One director. So on and so forth. So. but he was doing this. He went back to his kind of guerrilla, like they were doing this almost guerrilla filmmaking again back in the day. And so something that should have been a $250 million blockbuster, he made for $80 million.
Yeah.
So he brought that price tag way down while still making it big. Honestly, he even thought he could make it for less, but he was shooting post-pandemic when all prices skyrocketed.
Oh, yeah.
And so it ballooned from, I think he wanted to make it for 50 or 60 million, and it went up to 80 million just because everything was suddenly, inflation hit, everything was more expensive than blah, blah, blah.
By the way, guys, shameless plug, if you haven't seen his, which is basically his calling card, Monsters. It's beautiful. It's a ride. It's fun. You don't notice the price tag, which is always a great thing.
Yeah. But anyway, what we're going to get to actually talking about Severance here in just a second. Just to reiterate one last time, consumers, you are consumers.
You are.
You can either consume everything willy-nilly, but then you do lose the right to complain about everything being the same and never getting anything different.
Say that one more time for the cheap seats.
You can choose to consume everything willy-nilly. But if you do, you lose the right to complain that everything is the same and all you get is the same thing that you've been consuming willy-nilly left and right. I had a conversation online with someone, and I know it was a conversation online, but nevertheless, it still surprised me. I had a conversation with someone online where I basically stated, I was like, but if you watch it on Netflix, and I think this was Rebel Moon we were talking about, I'm like, if you watch it on Netflix, you're supporting it. You're voting for more of it.
Right.
And I don't know, it was an internet thing. It was online. I think it was on Letterboxd. So I have no idea how old this person was. I don't know what generation they were from. I don't know if they're in their teens, 20s, 60s, who fucking knows. But they literally were like, that viewpoint baffles me. I don't see it that way at all.
Wow.
Yeah. They fully rejected it as a theory of how it works. And they were like, no, if I watch something that I'm not voting for it one way or the other. And I was like, it doesn't matter what you personally think. Wow. Like, that's the point. It's like, we know views are how Netflix makes all its decisions, just views.
Yeah.
And especially quote unquote opening weekend views and opening month views and how long it stays on their top 10. If everyone races to watch something to talk about it, they will make more of that.
They will.
And if you didn't like it, if you're all talking about how much you don't like it, Netflix don't give no shit. They only care that you race to watch it and that you will race to watch the sequel.
That's right.
to talk more shit about it.
That's right.
That's all they care about. And so you are voting for more shit if you think it's shit. If you don't think it's shit, if you're like, no, I like this, well, great. Then you did it right because that is your vote for that thing that you like. Anyway.
All right. We're down off the soapboxes now.
Yes,
we'll get on to the subject here.
So Severance. Dallas. So for me, my story is pretty simple. I did watch Severance pretty shortly after it debuted on Apple. I watched it back in 2022, I believe.
Interesting.
It just looked super, super intriguing. And it was brand new. So I was like, you know what? Let's watch it because I might not like it, or it might be one of those, like, it's intriguing, but it's intriguing in all the wrong ways, or like a Lost kind of a thing where you're like, they're just making this shit up as they go. There's no plan here. I'm not on board with this. Is it intriguing? Yes. Do I like it? I think no. I think I'm checking out.
Yeah.
But in the end, I had just recently watched all of Netflix's Dark, the German TV show.
Right.
Time travel, multiversal mindfuck of a movie that blew me away.
Yeah.
And Severance looked like it might be a much calmer, lower key version of that, but similar mindfuck, but in a good way.
Okay.
And it absolutely was. Yeah. And I love Adam Scott. I love Parks and Rec. So I watched it. We watched it fairly quickly. I'm not a binge watcher.
Okay.
I hate binge watching.
That was my next question. How did you consume it? Okay, good.
So we must have watched. The 9 episodes took us at least 2 months to watch. Yeah. And I'm okay with that because especially I know I was watching it early on. So I'm like, I know I got a year or more to wait for season 2.
Right.
So like, again, what's the rush? Like, just take your time and let it settle and let it percolate.
Yeah.
So I'd seen all of this before preparing for this podcast. This was my second viewing. I had not rewatched it since. And it was, I remember loving it. And this show, both strikes really postponed this show tremendously in terms of its production of season 2. Mm-hmm. So I've had a lot of time to sit on season 1, much longer than we should have.
Yeah.
So I did not remember all the details. Like episode 1, right off the bat, we'll talk more in depth about this in a minute, but right off the bat, so I wrote a note down. I'm like, so much more happens in this episode than I remember. Like this is, I remembered the show being quote unquote slow burn,
Yeah.
and it is, but it isn't. It's only 9 episodes. So in a way, shit happens fast. Shit is always happening. They're introducing new characters. Every episode advances the plot in unexpected ways that you're like, whoa, I did not expect this to move so fast. You expect it to kind of be glacial and just like brood on the weirdness and just sort of sit. Like they'll introduce one new weird thing and then just sit on that for 2 or 3 episodes. No. Every episode is like taking you further into this weirdness and darkness and offness of the whole thing in shocking ways. So the second rewatch has been I'm loving. I like it even more than the first time I watched it. So Dallas, go ahead.
All right, so you know, I'm generally a guy who doesn't follow the hype in terms of a show's release. I will watch a trailer, and if the trailer tells me too much about the show, generally I'm not interested. That goes for the same for film. And when this came out, I remember seeing a brief sort of teaser trailer, and they had included some of the opening title sequence montage, which is basically sort of an AI kind of animated generation kind of thing. And it was the first time I remember seeing that in sort of, you know, a studio.
Right. And folks who are opposed to AI, can I just say, I think this is one time when I'm really all for it, because 100%. The AI, it looks so weird and eerie. Yeah. Like it's blatantly AI or whoever animated it was trying to replicate AI animation and AI drawings. And remember, this was probably this dropped in end of 2022.
So it was 2 years.
This must have been made early 2022 or late 2021 when it was all being worked on. Who knows? This was early into the AI thing, but the show does so well with it because the show is so off, right? And this animated sequence, you're looking at these AI animated Adam Scotts, and you're just like, God, they look eerie as fuck, and it's so perfect.
It harkens back to why the creepypasta era was so interesting, because there was always a little dissonance, you know, a little sort of lack of resolve in the animation, in the frames, and it was creepy. It was definitely creepy. And the title sequence for Severance is so creepy, but the colors are sort of vibrant. And so there is this kind of contradiction that forces the eye to watch every frame. And it is one of the first times in 20 years where I actually watched every frame of a title sequence. And then rewatched it, and then rewatched it again. So when this first came out, you know, I said to myself, okay, this is probably just going to be them throwing everything at the goddamn board to see what sticks. It's probably not going to have any cohesion.
Like Lost,
exactly. And to be fair, we have no fucking clue if that's still going to happen in season 2 or season 3. So, but season 1 on its own has sold me. But when this first came out, I sort of poo-pooed it. I wasn't really watching anything. I kind of checked out of the streamers, honestly. I was over it. And it wasn't until about 3 or 4 months ago, my partner said, you know, well, let's watch the first episode of Severance. I was like, all right, fine. You know, I wasn't a really big fan of Adam's comedic work. I really am not a huge fan of seeing him in comedic roles. And just but let me tell you, I don't care if he does it. I don't care if he does it. I don't care if he does another comedic role in his life. I only want to see him in
Parks and Rec.
I only want to see him in drama. He is fucking phenomenal and thrillers. He's just his subtlety, anyway. So
Can I just say, as a quick in defense, not that I mean, comedy is so subjective, so it is what it is. But
it's all subjective.
His subtlety is what I think makes him so good in comedy, because everyone else is like larger than life, and his reactions and his characters are usually very subdued. Even though they're twisted slightly for comedy purposes. So, and like how he reads in comedy and how he reads in drama is distinct.
Yes.
it's nevertheless, he has this very everyman, plain spoken, very subdued, like his reaction in Park and Rec, like everyone is going, are very cartoon characters. And then he's just giving the audience that look like, he's like Jim Halpert in The Office.
Yeah.
Right. It's like that character who is so us because he's looking at the zaniness and the shenanigans and being like, these guys are all whack.
He's the audience.
Right.
And of course.
Yeah.
But he play. What's crazy is I had totally forgotten that I had put this show on my list 2 years earlier when it came out, and so we played the clip and the opening sequence, the title sequence played, and I was like, "What the fuck is this? This is fantastic!" It's because I just love anything that's kind of askew. I love the dissonance. I love it all, and that first. Those first two scenes, I was hooked. The first two scenes, the fact that they were so sparse and the location and the set, they had me. They fucking had me, and I was annoyed by it. So yeah, that's my sort of route into this world. And it's just been fascinating ever since. I will say, I learned that that Ben Stiller was associated with the show halfway through episode 1 and immediately got a little offended. I'm not sure what that was. I have a knee-jerk reaction to Ben Stiller sometimes.
You have a knee-jerk reaction to anything mainstream. And the moment you see something Ben Stiller, you're like, oh, I can't like this anymore.
No,
it's Ben Stiller. I'm not supposed to like Ben Stiller.
That's not what I say. I take a moment of pause and consider. I don't judge. There's a moment of pause. I will absolutely admit that. But I sort of let that go, and I let my sort of idea that I wasn't a fan of Adam Scott. He's an actor, of course. He's a chameleon, and it just sort of blossomed and opened up right in my fucking face, and I was hooked, and I was annoyed. Again, I keep saying this. I was absolutely annoyed that I was hooked.
You shouldn't be. See, the only I'm hoping this podcast will turn over a little bit of a new leaf for you over time in terms of, like you have this way of viewing things, I think, and you can see it in the language choice that you use. Like you're annoyed that you like something. And it's like, why? Why not pleasantly surprised? Like, why is it annoyance for you when someone comes through, even like, especially when a creator or a studio or an actor, whoever it is, someone comes through in a way you wouldn't have given them credit for. And it's like, that's awesome. That's great. Like that to me is why you watch any media, why you consume any media is for those experiences, for those moments. So I'm not saying don't be annoyed.
The annoyance isn't at the individual's work. That's not the annoyance. The annoyance is that I walk in expecting, sort of a certain thing or something not to be good. And yes, I'm not saying that that sort of idea of being pleasantly surprised isn't the next beat, because it clearly is. But the initial beat is annoyance, because now I can't discount it, outright.
but why do you want to? That's the thing, right?
Because
I
there's
think that's
so
the
much
question.
trash, damn it, and I don't have time.
Right, but if this is not that, and that's the thing, you've now found something that is not trash as far as you can tell, right? And so that's it. Your search for now is over.
Right.
You get to have something. So again, why annoyance?
No, that's just the machinery. That's the machinery. That's the thing,
baby. I'm hoping to
that's never going
remold in your brain. No,
never going anywhere.
I'm hoping we change. Dallas, change is constant.
Is great.
Yes. So change in people, evolution is good.
Yeah, okay.
It's good.
Okay.
You don't want to go as long as and I know you would consider it like, I'm not going backwards, but you've never been different. You've never been open to what you would consider mainstream trash. So you're not going backwards. You're just allowing the moments.
What do you mean? I love the Transformers series. What are you talking about? I'm clearly open to mainstream trash.
You do not love the Transformers series.
I love Michael Bay's nonsense. I love it.
But the Transformers nonsense specifically.
Yeah. Love it. It's just
even
pure,
the later
It's pure ridiculousness, and there's no other.
Okay, so you're okay with liking something ironically in that regard, right? So you're okay, like dismissive, like in a way where you're like, but I love it because I know it's no good. I love it because it's beneath me. But then when you see something where you're like, oh fuck, they're good.
Yes,
like now I'm annoyed.
Exactly, that's what it is. Because in that first reaction is annoyance, but tandem to that, right after that, the next beat is absolutely pleasantly surprised.
Oh, God,
it's just we got to go through the annoying stage first.
I suppose you're so. I always love.
Were you about to say pretentious?
Oh yeah.
Oh, come on. Bro.
So I was just rephrasing. I was about to say it anyway, which is I was just like starting the sentence over again. But I have a knee-jerk reaction against pretentiousness. I think in both entertainment and the wine world, like whenever Nolan or Tarantino get on their soapbox about cinema, and the theater, the theatrical experience, and 70 millimeter, I'm like, I just check it. I'm like, y'all are so full of shit. I'm like, one, you all are rich, like embedded,
right.
Like you don't know what the theatrical experience is for the common person.
Right.
So, stop speaking for us, please. And if your movies only work in 70 millimeter and 7.1 surround sound, I mean, okay, but you're like, if your work is only that specific and it can't be well received, or in your opinion well received or understood, or you don't get the experience the way it's supposed to be in any other way, I'm like, I feel like you're not doing your job.
Yeah, exactly.
As a modern creator, you need to be creating something that can work in both formats easily and well. So and then same thing in wine, right? Like in the wine world, the pretension in the wine world kills me.
Yeah.
Where I'm just the idea that like wine is supposed to be one way, or varietally correct is the way this thing is supposed to taste. And I'm like, look, either it's tasty or it's not. And from there, we should be doing everything under the sun in the wine world. And it shouldn't be about, we need to be trying to bring costs down if at all possible, without sacrificing the quality of the wine, or making sure we're not sacrificing the environment or the sustainability or things like that. But pretension is about standing still. Almost 999 out of 1,000 times.
Absolutely. You're creating prestige. Yes. You're creating the idea of prestige.
You're not moving forward. You're not finding new ways. You're not bringing back, even in the wine world, one of the things, I'm going to write a whole article about this at some point, but orange wine, right? Oh, yeah. We are still trying to get over the quote unquote newness of orange wine. And it ain't new.
There's nothing new about it, people.
Right. We forgot about it in most of the world.
That's right.
And then the supposed experts, the pretentious people, like literally forgot about it and didn't realize it was historical. So when it came back, they're like, oh, this newfangled thing. And it's like, but it's not new, man. It's not new. You just stopped making it that way for a long, long time because of conventional wisdom of these prestigious, important figures in the wine world all decided it wasn't a thing anymore. And then a generation later, no one remembered it, and they were the keepers of the knowledge. And so we had to accept, but to this day, they're like new styles, like orange wine.
Like orange
stop
wine.
Calling it that. Right. Stop. I'm like, I get it. It came back. It's new to us.
It's new to you,
now, these new generations. But we have to stop calling it new style, because that's making it something it's not. And it's giving because again, they're trying to keep that prestige of the knowledge keepers. I don't want to call gatekeepers exactly, but you could call it gatekeepers.
Actually,
I
think a more apt term is actually gatekeepers, because it's like you said, the keepers of the knowledge. The idea that you're creating this sort of prestige, and remember, there's a whole economy that is built around that notion of prestige. That's essentially what people are attempting to protect. When they position themselves as gatekeepers or
okay, so fair. So gatekeepers, and to that point, I have a very knee-jerk reaction both in wine and in entertainment. The moment what's pretension. The moment I was like, not prestige, pretension rears its head. I'm like, chill out. I'm like, come on. It's like, it's too much. It's like, the moment I start, and I'm guilty. I'm a human being. Like, we're all guilty of pretentious thoughts and pretentious knee-jerk reactions to things. But for me, the moment I catch myself getting that pretentious knee-jerk reaction where something I want to be beneath me, I immediately unclench because I don't want that to be my thought process. I don't want to be pretentious about it. And the thing might suck. It might be terrible. It might be like, I don't like Michael Bay or Zack Snyder's stuff for the most part. I feel like both are, especially Michael Bay, who's often still more celebrated than Snyder in wider circles. And I get the celebration. I get what he brought to the table. I get what he did for tentpole action cinema, especially in the West. And he gets credit for a number of those things, but I do think it's a bit overblown at times. And especially now, he's definitely not doing anything new anymore.
No,
he's just being Michael Bay, right?
Not at all.
Yeah.
But that's essentially what you're saying is, I definitely don't consider, I hope there's no one who's speaking about Michael Bay with any sense of pretension. Because there are people who speak of his sort of, it's not even an artistic kind of platform that he is associated with. It's really just his ability to kind of wrangle chaos, which is really his strong suit. Now, is he genius because of that? No, but is he just the guy who did it bigger and louder than anyone else? Yes.
I will say though, like, I need to go back and revisit because I never actually saw Bad Boys 1 and 2 back in the day. I only saw them relatively recently, like in the 2010s. I finally saw Bad Boys 1 and 2 and then saw Bad Boy 3 in the theater. Haven't seen Bad Boys 4 yet. And a lot of people for Bad Boys 3 and 4, they're like, oh, well, these directors are no Michael Bay. And I'm like, I'm okay with that. I'm like, I really wasn't looking for yet more. One, these actors are older. Let's not put them through those paces again. But Michael Bay is, he's kind of like Shane Black without the wit. You know what I mean? Where he's like, he's sending up the most extreme cliches of the genre. But then with Bay, it's not a send up.
Right.
And whereas with Black, there's this sort of very cleverness to it, where it's like he's very aware that he's like, this is all silly and stupid. And I don't think Michael Bay is aware of that. Some people, and I think that's what some people like about him, is like he's so committed to the excessiveness.
I think the sort of masterstroke for Michael Bay is that his films are made for, and there are going to be a lot of people who disagree with this, for children. And so when your audience is...
except the content is not, right? I mean, that's the problem.
But that's just it. The content isn't, but he's making films, the aesthetic and, all the sort of components for children. So, those really poorly drawn archetypes they are center stage. They aren't played with any irony. They aren't played with any sort of send up. So that is a sort of difference between he and Shane. I mean, one of them.
Well, and I will say, a lot of people, of course, will say, well, but Michael Bay was taking a lot of Hong Kong, cinema aesthetics and tone and the tonal mashup and that type of extremeness and again, it's like for children. If you ever watch Hong Kong cinema, like a lot of it, like the humor in it takes you aback every time because the humor is almost like talking down to like the lowest common denominator, while the violence is so excessive and extreme and in your face and visceral that you're just like, who is this for? And you have, and Bay really did bring that over to the West. And again, I love Hong Kong cinema. I do, but a couple things there. One, some of it is a lot better done than the rest of it, right? So
of course,
you have really like fine-tuned, this is firing on all cylinders. The humor is not as gratuitously childlike, and the violence is dialed in. Like the balance between them and the way they flow into one another is actually, like a John Woo Hard Boiled or something, where it's like there are moments of kind of sort of levity or almost like a Shane Black wink wink, but then it works so well as a piece. A Better Tomorrow is another one from John Woo that does that, whereas then there are plenty of John Woo ripoffs and wannabes during his period that are, again, they're like more generic Hong Kong cinema, where it's the humor's a little too much and does take you out of the picture and doesn't quite mash up. And you can enjoy that as an experience, but do I call them good movies as a complete movie?
Yeah.
Not really. Would I recommend it to just any cinema goer? God, no. And I think that's the difference is Michael Bay is like, you can like, I mean, we all like what we like, and whatever you like, awesome. You know, good on you. Go for it. Support it. Go see it. But in terms of like everyone should love it, is I'm like, no,
of course
I
not.
will argue like John Woo, pretty much everyone should be able to admire what John Woo does. But the John Woo ripoffs, no, not really. I mean, you either love it so much you even want those movies and you're going to enjoy those movies too, the lesser versions of John Woo. But for everyone else, no, I wouldn't say that. And Michael Bay is one of those where I think he has a few movies that are like honest to God gems. And then there's a lot of other output, especially the Transformers movies. Like you said, he's controlled chaos, or he does chaos in a way that other people can't. And I think actually he fails in the Transformers movies in terms of wrangling that chaos. You cannot follow what the fuck is happening outside of like maybe the first.
But here's the
movie.
thing: you're not supposed to follow. It doesn't matter if you can follow it.
Sure.
It actually doesn't matter.
I kind of get that, but at the same time, I'm not giving him credit for it. You know?
Oh yeah, see, that's the difference. That's the difference.
Right.
He, another sort of interesting point. We will move away from this conversation.
We will talk about Severance. We promise.
We'll get that. We'll get the boat back there on. Geez, I just lost that word. Anyway, Michael Bay also does this thing, and I think he is probably the greatest example of that in like the latter half of the 20th century of a creator who started making films for global audiences, truly global, to open globally. And so what end up having is, first of all, you've got a universally identified toy brand archetype, right? That's the baseline. Yeah, everybody knows what a Transformer is. Every country has a version of the Transformers. It is, the idea of a mech, right? That's nothing new. But also, the characters he starts to draw become so one-dimensional, maybe two-dimensional, that there is no need to update for regional color and specificity.
Sure,
and,
of course, yeah.
So that's another reason it is.
That's the holy grail, and certainly was during the Transformers movies. That's what everyone was after, right?
It really is, and he really sort of stamped that space. Not to say that it is any artistic feat or creative feat, but I think in terms of the industry, it really became kind of, he became the tentpole, so to speak.
Sure.
Anyway,
so
moving on from that.
I mean, I grant all that, but I think all the points stand. But of course, there's a reason they were made. There's a reason Michael Bay is so big.
And by the way, Michael Bay, if you're out there, you want to direct a short. I wrote a short called Michael Bay, please direct my my kitchen table drama.
Short. Oh, just make that without him. God damn it. And then go by the pen name as a director. Like, just spell Michael differently. Like, inverse some of the letter. Put an E at the end or something.
That's right.
Like Michelle, like Michelle Bay.
Michelle Bay.
Michael Bay.
Michael Old Bay,
Oh, Michael Old Bay. I like it. I love it. Thank you so much for listening to our very first TV show episode. And we're so sorry for getting sidetracked for the whole second part of this part one. We will talk Severance in part two. We promise episodes 1 through 3 will be in part 2 with our first wine pairings for those first 3 episodes. So please join us then. Thank you so much for listening. We will be back in less than a week with another wine and entertainment pairing for your entertainment. This actually same pairing. This show, but with an actual wine pairing. Thanks so much, guys. See you then.